Imagine being a lawyer, knowing your rights, and still getting harassed by racist cops. Now, picture those same cops trying to lie in court, only for the judge to absolutely destroy them. This is exactly what went down in this insane courtroom showdown. Stick around, because justice doesn't get sweeter than this. Before we dive in, where are you watching from and what time is it for you? Drop a comment and let us know. The street was quiet, the kind of late-night stillness where every sound carries. Marcus Carter's sedan moved smoothly through the dimly lit neighborhood, his thoughts occupied with the case files he'd been reviewing at the office. As a defense attorney, these late-night drives home had become routine, though tonight would prove anything but ordinary. The sudden flash of red and blue lights in his rear-view mirror startled him. Marcus instinctively checked the speedometer, 28 in a 30 zone. His taillights were functioning perfectly. He'd checked them just yesterday. His registration and insurance were current. There was no reason for this stop, yet the patrol car's lights continued their insistent strobe against the darkened storefronts lining the street. Marcus pulled over smoothly, rolling down his window as the two officers approached from either side. The beam of a powerful flashlight hit his face before he could turn, temporarily blinding him. License and registration. Came the gruff command from his left. No pleasantries, no explanation. Good evening, officers, Marcus responded, handing over the requested documents. His voice remained calm, professional. May I ask why I was stopped tonight? The officer on his left ignored the question, studying Marcus's license with exaggerated scrutiny. His partner leaned in from the passenger side. Step out of the vehicle. The command came without preamble or justification. Marcus felt the first prickle of unease. He knew the law, had built his career on understanding these very interactions. Officer, am I being detained? If so, I'd like to know the reason for this stop. His tone remained respectful but firm. The flashlight beam shifted to illuminate Marcus's face again. You one of those know-it-all types? The first officer sneered. Think you're smarter than everyone else? Marcus kept his hands visible on the steering wheel. I'm actually a defense attorney. Unless I'm under arrest, I prefer to continue on my way home. The moment the words left his mouth, he saw the change in their posture, a subtle stiffening, an exchange of glances between the two officers. The second officer's hand went to his belt. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. On what charge? Marcus asked, keeping his voice level despite the adrenaline beginning to course through him. Disorderly conduct. Resisting. Take your pick. The officer's tone made it clear this wasn't a negotiation. Before Marcus could respond, his door was wrenched open and strong hands grabbed his arm. He found himself being pulled forcibly from the vehicle, his protestations ignored. You're making a serious mistake here, Marcus said as he was spun around and pushed against the hood of his own car. The cold metal pressed against his stomach as the cuffs clicked shut, deliberately over-tightened. Always got something to say, don't you? One officer muttered as they marched him to their squad car. Marcus remained silent now, conserving his energy. In the backseat of the patrol car, he focused on memorizing every detail, badge numbers, exact phrasing used, the sequence of events. His phone, still in his pocket, had been recording since the moment the lights first appeared behind him. At the precinct, the charges piled up: resisting arrest, obstruction, disorderly conduct. The paperwork was filled with lies, each more egregious than the last. They processed him like any other suspect. Fingerprints, mugshot, the whole degrading ritual. But where another man might have felt fear or despair, Marcus felt only cold determination. These officers had no idea who they were dealing with or what forces they just unleashed. The hours in the holding cell gave Marcus time to plan. He reviewed the encounter minute by minute, identifying every violation, every departure from protocol. By the time bail was posted and he walked out into the morning light, his course was set. This wasn't just about one wrongful arrest anymore. It was about holding power to account, about proving that even the system's enforcers weren't above the law. Little did the officers know, their careers were about to collide with the very justice system they'd sworn to serve. And when that collision came, it would be Marcus Carter standing ready to pick up the pieces. The morning sun streamed through Marcus's office windows as he reviewed the arrest report for what must have been the 20th time. His wrists still bore faint red marks from the too tight handcuffs, a physical reminder of last night's injustice. Spread across his mahogany desk were copies of the police report, his own written account of events, and most importantly, the digital recording from his phone that captured the entire encounter. Marcus tapped his pen against the desk as he compared the officer's written statements to reality. According to Officer Daniels' report, Marcus had been swerving erratically before the stop, a complete fabrication. Officer Grady's supplemental statement claimed Marcus had become verbally abusive and physically resistant when asked to exit his vehicle. The audio recording proved otherwise, capturing Marcus's calm, professional tone throughout the entire interaction. A knock at his office door interrupted his review. "Come in," Marcus called, straightening his tie. His paralegal, Sarah, entered with a fresh cup of coffee. "You look like you haven't slept," she observed, setting the mug down carefully away from the documents. "I pulled everything we have on Officers Daniels and Grady like you asked." Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. "And?" Sarah's expression turned grim. "They got complaints. A lot of them. For excessive force allegations in the past 2 years, all against Black or Latino men. 2 wrongful arrest settlements paid out by the city. But here's the kicker. Every time, Internal Affairs cleared them. Their union rep must be working overtime." Marcus sipped his coffee, letting the bitterness match his mood. "I want motions prepared for dismissal based on unlawful stop and selective enforcement. Then subpoenas for all their personnel files, dash cam footage from their patrol car, and the names of every arrest they've made in the past 6 months." Sarah hesitated. "Marcus, you know, they're going to fight this tooth and nail. These guys are connected. The DA's office dash will do what they always do," Marcus finished. "Protect their own until the evidence makes it impossible. Well, this time we got them dead to rights." As Sarah left to begin the paperwork, Marcus turned back to his computer. He pulled up the video file from his phone again, watching as the officers' faces filled the screen. Their casual arrogance, their complete confidence that their version of events would be the only one that mattered. It all played out in high definition. Marcus allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. They had no idea what was coming. The arraignment hearing 3 days later was a circus. The courtroom buzzed with activity as Marcus entered, nodding politely to the bailiff. He spotted Officers Daniels and Grady immediately, standing near the prosecutor's table in crisp uniforms, their backs straight with military precision. They glanced his way, their expressions carefully neutral, but Marcus didn't miss the flicker of unease in Daniels' eyes. Assistant District Attorney Reynolds, a career prosecutor with a reputation for being ruthless, approached Marcus with a tight smile. "Carter, you're looking well for someone facing resisting charges. My office is willing to offer dash." "Save it, Reynolds," Marcus interrupted quietly. "We both know this is bullshit, and we both know I've got the evidence to prove it." Reynolds' smile didn't reach his eyes. "You were in handcuffs, Marcus. That tends to undermine your credibility with juries." Before Marcus could respond, the bailiff called the court to order. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Evelyn Watkins." The courtroom rose as Judge Watkins entered, her black robe swirling around her. At 65, she was the most respected jurist in the county, known for her no-nonsense approach and keen legal mind. Marcus watched as she settled into her chair and adjusted her glasses, her sharp gaze sweeping across the room. "Case number 2023, CR 4587, State versus Marcus Carter," the clerk announced. "Defendant is charged with 1 count of resisting arrest, 1 count of obstruction, and 1 count of disorderly conduct." Judge Watkins reviewed the file before her. "Mr. Carter, I must say I'm surprised to see you on this side of the bar. How do you plead?" Marcus stood. "Not guilty on all counts, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Mr. Reynolds, this seems like an unusual case. What's the state's position?" Reynolds rose smoothly. "Your Honor, the police report indicates Mr. Carter became combative during a routine traffic stop. Officers Daniels and Grady dash." "Your Honor," Marcus interrupted, "if I may, I have video evidence that directly contradicts the officers' accounts." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Watkins raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Let's see it. Marcus connected his laptop to the courtroom's AV system. As the video began playing on a large monitor, the entire room fell silent. The footage showed the traffic stop from Marcus's perspective. The sudden lights, the flashlight at his face, the officer's escalating aggression despite his calm demeanor. Most damning of all was the clear audio of Officer Daniels saying, "You one of those know-it-all types?" followed by the unfounded order to exit the vehicle. When the video ended, the silence was deafening. Judge Watkins removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. "Mr. Reynolds, do you still wish to proceed with these charges?" Reynolds looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Your Honor, perhaps we should dash." Before he could finish, Judge Watkins turned to the officers. "Officers Daniels and Grady, please approach the bench." The two officers exchanged nervous glances before stepping forward. Judge Watkins let the silence stretch uncomfortably long before speaking. "Gentlemen, I've been on this bench for 22 years. In that time, I've seen my share of police officers lie under oath, but never have I seen it done with such arrogance, and never have I seen it captured so clearly on video." Officer Daniels opened his mouth to speak, but Judge Watkins held up a hand. "No, I don't want to hear your excuses. What I want to know is why an officer of the court, a defense attorney with no criminal record, was treated this way. And more importantly, how many others have you treated this way who didn't have the resources to fight back?" The officers stood frozen. Their earlier confidence evaporated. Judge Watkins turned back to Reynolds. "These charges are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering an independent review of every arrest these officers have made in the past 3 years. And Mr. Reynolds, if your office tries to obstruct that review in any way, I'll hold you in contempt." The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the stunned courtroom. As the judge exited, Marcus allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction before turning to face Officers Daniels and Grady. Their expressions were a mix of anger and something else. Fear, perhaps, of the reckoning that was coming. Outside the courthouse, reporters had already gathered, tipped off by someone about the unusual case. Marcus answered their questions calmly, but declined to gloat. This wasn't about revenge, it was about accountability. As he walked away from the courthouse steps, his phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "You're trending. 3 more people have come forward with complaints against Daniels and Grady since the hearing." Marcus allowed himself a small smile as he hailed a cab. The battle might be won, but the war was just beginning. Across town, the police union lawyers were undoubtedly already preparing their defense, the machinery of institutional protection grinding into motion. But for the first time in his career, Marcus wasn't just fighting for a client. He was the client. And that changed everything. The next morning, Marcus arrived at his office to find a stack of messages from potential new clients, all with stories about encounters with Officers Daniels and Grady. As he sorted through them, his phone rang. The display showed a number he recognized immediately, the mayor's office. "Mr. Carter," the smooth voice on the other end said, "the mayor would like to meet with you to discuss police reform. Given your unique perspective." Marcus leaned back in his chair, staring at the growing pile of complaints on his desk. "Tell the mayor I'll be there," he said, "and tell him to bring his notepad. We have a lot to discuss." The wheels of justice turned slowly, Marcus knew, but sometimes with the right push, they could be made to turn faster. And he intended to push with everything he had. The mayor's office was exactly as Marcus had imagined, all polished oak and leather, with a view of the city skyline that probably cost taxpayers a fortune. Mayor Richard Ellison stood as Marcus entered, his politician smile firmly in place as he extended a hand. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. I've followed your case with great interest." Marcus shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip and lingering eye contact, all the hallmarks of a man used to being in control. "Mr. Mayor," he acknowledged simply, taking the seat across an expansive desk. Ellison settled back into his chair, steepling his fingers. "That video footage was illuminating. I want you to know the city doesn't condone that kind of behavior from our officers." Marcus kept his expression neutral. With all due respect, sir, the city has been settling misconduct lawsuits against officers Daniels and Grady for years. What's different this time? The mayor's smile tightened slightly. This time we have incontrovertible evidence, and a high-profile victim who knows how the system works. He leaned forward, which brings me to why I asked you here. I'm forming a police accountability task force, and I'd like you to chair it. Marcus hadn't expected this. He studied the mayor's face, looking for the angle. That's quite an offer. Why me? Because you've lived it, Ellison said, spreading his hands. You understand the law. You experienced the problem firsthand. And frankly, you've got the public's attention right now. The press conference announcing your appointment would send a powerful message. Marcus glanced out the window at the city below. He could see the courthouse where his case had been dismissed just days ago. I'd need certain guarantees, he said finally. Full access to personnel records, subpoena power, authority to recommend termination of officers with sustained complaints. The mayor hesitated just a beat too long. Within reason, of course. We have union contracts to consider dash. Then I'm not your guy, Marcus interrupted, standing. This isn't about press conferences or political points. Either we're serious about reform, or we're just putting lipstick on a pig. Ellison's eyes narrowed slightly. Then he nodded. Sit down, Mr. Carter. Let's talk specifics. 2 hours later, Marcus left City Hall with a draft memorandum of understanding in his briefcase and a headache forming behind his eyes. The compromises had been painful but necessary. He'd gotten a subpoena power and records access, but the union had successfully blocked immediate termination authority. Still, it was more than anyone else had gotten in decades. His phone buzzed as he hailed a cab. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. You're not going to believe this. Her voice came through the earpiece. Daniels and Grady have been placed on administrative leave. And guess who just called asking for a meeting? Police Chief Morrison. Marcus exhaled sharply. Set it up. And start compiling every complaint we have on those two. I want dates, witnesses, everything. The cab pulled up to his office building, where a small crowd had gathered. Several held signs reading Black Lawyers Matter and End Police Brutality. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat as he recognized some of his former clients among the protesters. A young woman broke from the crowd, approaching hesitantly. Mr. Carter? I'm Tanisha Williams. Your case, it gave me courage. She pulled a folded document from her bag. This is my complaint against Officer Grady from last year. The DA never filed charges. Marcus accepted the paper carefully, as if it might disintegrate. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Would you be willing to testify if needed? Her chin lifted. Try and stop me. Inside his office, Marcus found Sarah at her desk, surrounded by stacks of files. We got 12 more since you left with the mayor's, she said without looking up, including one from a retired cop who says Daniels has been dirty for years. Marcus set his briefcase down. The chief wants to meet? Tomorrow at 10. His office. Sarah finally looked up, her eyes tired but determined. Marcus, be careful. These people play for keeps. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Marcus's mood as he entered police headquarters. The building had the sterile, institutional feel of all government offices, but an undercurrent of tension that set his teeth on edge. Officers stopped talking as he passed, their eyes following him down the hallway. Chief Morrison's secretary showed him in immediately. The chief stood behind his desk, a bear of a man with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Carter, he greeted, gesturing to a chair. Coffee? No, thank you, Chief. I'd rather get to the point. Morrison sighed, lowering himself into his own chair. Fair enough. I'll be blunt. You're making my life difficult. Good. Marcus said evenly. That makes us even. The chief's lips twitched, almost smiling. I like you, Carter. Always have. Which is why I'm going to give you some advice. Be careful how far you push this. The mayor's task force is one thing, but digging into old cases? That's dangerous territory. Marcus leaned forward. With all due respect, Chief, dangerous for who? The officers who've been getting away with misconduct? Or the people they've been harassing? Morrison's expression darkened. You think I don't know about Daniels and Grady? You think I haven't tried to clean house? The union protects their own, and the city council cares more about re-election than reform. Then help me, Marcus said. Give me something I can use. The chief was silent for a long moment, then reached into his desk drawer. He slid a file across the polished surface. Off the record, Daniels has been on our radar for years. We suspect he's been planting evidence, but we've never been able to prove it. This is everything IA has, or had, before the union shut them down. Marcus opened the file, scanning the contents quickly. His pulse quickened as he recognized names, dates, patterns. This is enough to get started. Morrison finished. But Carter, watch your back. These boys don't fight fair. Marcus left headquarters with the file tucked securely in his briefcase, the weight of it feeling heavier than its physical mass. Back at his office, he and Sarah pored over the documents late into the night, cross-referencing them with the new complaints that continued to pour in. The pattern that emerged was worse than Marcus had imagined. Dozens of stops with questionable probable cause, evidence logs that didn't add up, suspects who mysteriously resisted arrest only after refusing to answer questions. And at the center of it all, officers Daniels and Grady. Their misconduct enabled by a system designed to protect its own. Sarah rubbed her eyes. This is systemic. How do we even begin? Marcus stared at the web of connections they'd mapped out on the whiteboard. We start with the most egregious cases, the ones where we have multiple witnesses or physical evidence. Then we take it public. You mean go to the media? Sarah sounded uncertain. I mean file a class action lawsuit on behalf of every victim we can find. Simultaneously, we push the task force to recommend sweeping policy changes, body cams that can't be turned off, independent prosecutors for police misconduct, civilian review boards with real power. Sarah whistled low. That's a tall order. Marcus thought of Tanisha Williams standing in the rain with her complaint, of the retired cop who'd risked his pension to come forward, of all the names in the files who hadn't had his education or resources to fight back. It's the least we owe them, he said quietly. The next weeks passed in a blur of strategy sessions, press conferences, and late-night legal drafting. The media coverage grew exponentially, with national outlets picking up the story of the attorney, who turned his own wrongful arrest into a crusade for justice. Then, on a Thursday morning exactly 6 weeks after his traffic stop, Marcus got the call he'd been waiting for. They're talking plea deals, the assistant DA told him. Sounding exhausted, Daniels will resign rather than face criminal charges. Grady's fighting it, but the evidence... Marcus hung up the phone, staring at the stacks of case files that now covered every available surface in his office. It wasn't perfect justice. It never was. But it was a start. The door opened, and Sarah entered with 2 cups of coffee and a tired smile. Guess who just called? The New York Times. They want to profile you for their Sunday edition. Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. Tell them to talk to Tanisha Williams. And the others. This was never just about me. Sarah nodded, understanding. The task force meets tomorrow. You ready? Marcus looked at the whiteboard, at all the names and dates and connections they'd painstakingly documented. No, he admitted, but that's never stopped us before. As night fell outside his office windows, Marcus Carter kept working, the city's lights twinkling like distant stars, reminders that even in the darkest moments, there were always points of light to guide the way forward. The police union lawyer Robert Hargrove looked like he hadn't slept in days. His normally crisp suit was wrinkled, his tie slightly loose, and his eyes carried the exhaustion of a man fighting a losing battle. Across the courtroom, Marcus sat perfectly composed, his notes neatly arranged, his expression unreadable. The gallery was packed beyond capacity. Reporters scribbling notes, activists holding their breath, city officials exchanging nervous glances, and even uniformed officers who had come to witness what would become the most pivotal police misconduct hearing in the city's history. When Judge Watkins entered, the room fell so silent you could hear the rustle of her robes as she took her seat. She dispensed with all formalities. Mr. Hargrove, she began, her voice carrying through the tense air. I've reviewed your motions to dismiss the task force's recommendations. Please explain why the union believes body cameras and independent oversight constitute unnecessary burdens on your officers. Hargrove stood slowly, clearing his throat. Your Honor, our primary concern is operational efficiency. Mandating that cameras remain active at all times could potentially prevent officers from breaking the law. Judge Watkins interrupted, her voice sharp with skepticism. Motion denied. Next item. Marcus kept his face neutral, but inside he felt the first surge of real hope. This was proceeding even better than he dared imagine. One by one, the task force's recommendations were presented. Real-time body camera monitoring that couldn't be disabled by officers, mandatory de-escalation training every 6 months, an independent review board with actual subpoena power, and most controversially, a publicly accessible database listing all sustained misconduct complaints against officers. Each proposal was met with increasingly desperate resistance from the union lawyers, but Judge Watkins cut through their objections like a scalpel. Then came the moment Marcus had been waiting for. Your Honor, Marcus said as he rose to his feet, we'd like to enter into evidence the complete internal affairs file on Officers Daniels and Grady, including documents previously withheld as confidential. Hargrove shot up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. Objection! Those records are protected personnel matters. Judge Watkins peered over her glasses with a look that could freeze fire. Not anymore, they're not. The public interest in police accountability far outweighs the union's desire for secrecy. Proceed, Mr. Carter. Marcus walked a courtroom projector with deliberate calm, inserting a flash drive into the system. The screen behind the judge's bench flickered to life, displaying a meticulously organized timeline that made the gallery erupt in murmurs. There were dozens of complaints spanning years, internal investigations that had been mysteriously closed without action, and most damning of all, text messages between Daniels and Grady joking about teaching suspects lessons and referring to certain neighborhoods as hunting grounds. Reporters scrambled to take notes. Several officers in the back of the room exchanged uneasy glances. A woman in the front row, the mother of a teenager Daniels had arrested on dubious charges, began crying silently. But Marcus wasn't finished. Your Honor, this evidence demonstrates something far more disturbing than 2 rogue officers. It reveals a system that actively protected them. He advanced to the next slide, a comprehensive list of every case the officers had worked where evidence appeared questionable, where charges had been mysteriously dropped after complaints were filed. These men weren't lone bad apples. They were enabled by procedures designed to shield officers from accountability. Hargrove looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. His usual courtroom swagger had completely evaporated. Judge Watkins leaned forward, her voice dangerously quiet. Mr. Hargrove, does the police union have any response to this evidence? The veteran attorney opened his mouth, then closed it again. For perhaps the first time in his career, Robert Hargrove had absolutely nothing to say. The judge nodded slowly. Then, I'll make this simple. The task force's recommendations are approved in their entirety. Body cameras will remain active throughout all interactions with the public. The Civilian Review Board will have full investigative authority. And as for Officers Daniels and Grady she paused dramatically, letting the tension build to almost unbearable levels. Their badges are hereby revoked. Permanently. The courtroom exploded. Cheers mixed with gasps of disbelief. Someone began clapping until Judge Watkins banged her gavel for order, though even she couldn't completely suppress the slight smirk tugging at the corners of her mouth. As the crowd began filing out, Marcus felt a heavy hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Chief Morrison standing there. The older man didn't offer any flowery speeches, just met Marcus's eyes and gave a single, firm nod. Then, so quietly only Marcus could hear, "You did good, Carter." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't redemption. But for now, it was enough. 1 year later, the changes came faster than even Marcus had anticipated. Body camera usage across the department hit 100% compliance within 3 months. The new independent review board had already overturned 4 wrongful convictions tied to misconduct. And the public database? Over 200 officers with sustained complaints had been either reassigned or terminated. Marcus stood on the steps of City Hall, watching as Mayor Ellison signed the final piece of reform legislation. A bill banning pretextual traffic stops like the one that had started everything. Camera flashes popped like fireworks. Reporters shouted over each other, trying to get statements. But Marcus wasn't looking at the politicians or the press. His attention was fixed on the crowd gathered behind the barricades. Tanisha Williams stood front and center, her smile brighter than the noonday sun. Beside her, the retired officer who'd risked his pension come forward stood tall, nodding with quiet satisfaction. Dozens of others, people whose cases Marcus had helped reopen, families who'd finally gotten some measured justice, clustered together, not cheering or chanting, just bearing witness. No grand speeches were needed. No dramatic declarations. The moment spoke for itself. As Marcus turned to leave, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to see a text from Sarah. "New case just came in. You're going to want to see this." He allowed himself a small, tired smile as he slipped the phone back in his pocket. The work wasn't over. It might never be over. But for the first time in a very long time, it felt like they were actually winning.